Hello, Assalamu alaikum students. So let's continue with our chapter of properties of fluids. So let's begin by solving this numerical. Calculate the dynamic viscosity of an oil which is used for lubrication between a square plate of size zero point 0.8 into 0.8 meter and an inclined plane with the angle of inclination 30 degrees. So with the help of this statement you can draw this figure. We have an inclined plane which is making an angle of 30 degrees with horizontal. The weight of the square plate is 300 Newton and it slides down the inclined plane with a uniform velocity of 0.3 meter per second. So this square plate, it is sliding down the inclined plane, and the space between them is filled with an oil which is used for lubrication purposes. The thickness of this oil film is 1.5 millimeter, and we need to determine the dynamic viscosity of an oil. The weight of the square plate is given. It is acting vertically downward. The weight is always vertically downward. So basically, we have to resolve this weight into two components. Its one component will be parallel to this plane, which will actually facilitate its movement, the movement of the square plate uh, towards this inclined plane, which will help in sliding. And the other component will be normal to this inclined plane, which is basically resisting its movement. So we have to resolve the force into two components. For that, I would like to revise the basic concept. Let's assume we have an inclined force F, and I can resolve it in two components. These components are mutually perpendicular to each other, and if the force F is making angle theta with horizontal, so this horizontal component will be cos theta. This is to be remember that the force, if it is making angle theta with the horizontal, then the horizontal will be the cos component and the other will be the sine component. If the reverse scenario, like if with the vertical the angle is given, let's say force F makes an angle beta with the vertical, then vertical will be the F cos component and the horizontal will be the sine component. Now let's also see the angle transformation. For that, let's see if we have two mutually perpendicular axes, these blue lines, and over which we have two orange lines. They are also mutually perpendicular to each other. Now if this orange line in the first quadrant, if this makes an angle theta with this axis, with the horizontal axis, then the other mutually perpendicular orange will make an angle theta with the other blue mutually perpendicular line. You can actually very easily understand it if you try to find out, if you try and determine the angle of this orange line with horizontal. You can see that we have an angle theta till this line, and these two orange lines are mutually perpendicular, so its angle will become theta plus 90. And we also know these two blue are also mutually perpendicular to each other, so the angle from this vertical blue till this orange line will become theta. So let me phrase it. If we have two sets of mutually perpendicular axes and one line from each axis, if it is making angle theta, so their perpendiculars will be making same angle theta. Let me say it again. If if we have two sets of mutually perpendicular lines and one line from each set, if it is making an angle theta, so their perpendiculars are making same angle theta. So let's apply this to our figure. We have an inclined plane which makes an angle theta with horizontal, and this square plate, it is sliding downward, and the weight of this plate, it will act vertically downward. This weight is W. I can resolve the W in two components. One component will be parallel to this plate in the direction of this velocity, and the other component, it will normal to this plate, normal to this inclined plane. So when this inclined plane is making an angle theta with horizontal. So perpendicular to this horizontal is this vertical, this weight. It will make the same angle with the normal to this inclined plane, that is with this axis. So the angle of weight with the component which is normal to this plate is theta, the same angle theta. So this component is W cos of theta, and the sliding component will become W sine of theta. So basically we are going to use the Newton's law of viscosity, which states that shear stress is equal to dynamic viscosity into rate of shear dO dy. So we're going to use this, and the shear force or shear stress is actually force per unit area, and this force will be W sine of theta. And this theta is 30 degrees. So over here they are using W cos of 16, so they are actually using the other angle. For me it was simple to use the same angle, 30 degrees. So if you calculate it, basically you're going to get the same answer, 120 newtons. So force divided by area, you will get the shear stress. Now substitute the value of du and dy, and just rearrange and simplify to get dynamic viscosity. This will be Newton second per meter square. You can multiply it by 10 to get it in poise. Hopefully you will be able to do it. Moving on to the next numerical. The space between two square flat parallel plates is filled with the oil. Each side of plate is 60 centimeter. The thickness of oil film is 12.5 millimeter. The upper plate, which moves at 2.5 meter per second, requires a force of 98.1 Newton to maintain its speed. Determine the dynamic viscosity of oil in poise and the kinematic viscosity of oil in Stokes if specific gravity of oil is 0.95. The first step should be to write the given data. The area is known, dy is known, velocity is known. This is very simple. The force is known, you have to calculate the shear stress, which is force per unit area. After that, use the same formula and calculate the dynamic viscosity. This will be Newton second per meter square. You convert it to poise. And you know, kinematic viscosity is the ratio of dynamic viscosity to mass density. So mass density of oil, it was given the specific gravity was 0.95. So multiply by the density of water, which is 1000. So you get 950 kg per meter cube. So you should also remember that you have to use the values of Newton second per meter square for dynamic viscosity to use the kg per meter cube for density in order to get the units meter square per second. Use the same system of units, that is SI. Now convert this meter square per second to centimeter square per second, and that is equal to Stokes, which is a CGS unit. Now try solving it. If you have any query, we can discuss it in our online session. So let's discuss the causes of viscosity in fluids. As we know, viscosity of a fluid is measure of its resistance to shear, or you can say resistance to its angular deformation. The fluid friction, this is actually, it results from the cohesion and the momentum interchange of molecules in a fluid. So let's discuss the viscosity in gases. As we know, the molecules of gases are only weakly kept in position by molecular cohesion. As the molecules are very far apart, the adjacent layers of molecules, they basically they experience momentum exchange of molecules from one layer to the other. The molecules of a slower layer, they move to the faster layer, causing a drag. That is, a molecule of a slower layer, it will go to the faster layer and it will try to stop it or reduce its velocity, while the molecules moving from the other way, that is, a molecule moving from a faster layer to a slower layer, it exerts an accelerating force. That is, it will try to speed up the other layer. So mathematically, if we consider this momentum exchange, this will lead us to Newton's law of viscosity. This derivation, this is given in the book of Fluid Mechanics with Engineering Applications by Doherty. You can refer to the book. If Now, if the temperature of a gas is increased, as the temperature of the gas is increased, this momentum exchange between layers will increase, which will eventually increase its viscosity. Viscosity will also depend on pressure, but under normal conditions, this change is negligible with gases. Now, the viscosity in liquids, as the liquids, they are kept much more tightly in position with relatively much stronger cohesive forces as compared to gases. So the momentum exchange is not that simple. So the viscosity, that is actually controlled by the cohesive forces. So you can say that in liquids, the cohesive forces, they predominate the molecular momentum transfer, while in gases, the molecular momentum, it predominates the cohesive forces. So at elevated temperature, as the cohesive forces in liquids, this will reduce. The viscosity, this will actually decrease as the flowability would increase. You can imagine it in liquids at elevated temperature, the cohesive forces, they will be uh, reduced, so eventually its flowability will increase, or you can say its viscosity will decrease. So the expression over here is given for mu t is the viscosity at any temperature t degrees centigrade, where mu naught is the viscosity at 0 degrees centigrade. It depends upon this denominator, the factors a and b, which are constant for the particular fluid. So with an increase of temperature, the viscosity of liquids, it decreases. So high pressure, it also changes the viscosity of liquid. As the pressure increases, the relative movement of molecules require more energy, hence viscosity increases. Surface tension. It is force required to maintain unit length of film in equilibrium. So this is actually force per unit length, or you can say the magnitude of this force will be same as the surface energy per unit area. Basically, surface tension is surface energy per unit area, but as the width is constant, so you can change it to force per unit length. So it is a force required to maintain unit length of film in equilibrium. So let's assume a liquid in a container as shown in this figure, and let's assume two molecules, one at the surface and one in the middle, and only this top surface, this is open to atmosphere or in contact with the air. So that surface which is in contact with the air, this will actually experience surface tension. Like shown over here, the surface tension will be for the topmost layer. All those sides which are in contact with the solid boundary, they will not experience any surface tension. Only the surface tension will be with the top surface. Now the molecule, this top molecule, this is actually experiencing, you can say, a pull from all the molecules surrounding it. Similarly, the molecule over here, this is experiencing a pull from all the other surrounding molecules. This molecule which is inside the liquid, this is in a much equilibrium, stable state, in a happy state, while the molecule on the surface, this is in a sad state, an unstable form. He wants to come down, and he doesn't want to stay in its position because it is unstable, um, because no force is acting from this top phase. So what happens is actually at the interface between a liquid and a gas, a film or a special layer seems to form on the liquid, apparently owing to the attraction of liquid molecules below the surface, that is, a cohesive forces, thus forms an elastic membrane in tension, which is called surface tension. This surface tension is formed in order to keep the molecule in a happy, stable state. So surface tension is constant at any given temperature for the surface of separation of two particular substances, but it decreases with increased temperature. So basically each molecule, it will experience the cohesive forces from all the surrounding molecules in all directions, and the topmost molecule, this is an unstable state, but what will happen, the molecules, the adjacent molecule, they will develop a elastic membrane to form, so that they could keep them in a stable state, and this transparent membrane formed is known as surface tension. So a few practical examples where the surface tension it can be experienced is, have you ever seen a mosquito or an ant walking on the water? In the next slide, I also have an animation related to it. I will show you that. So that is, they are actually walking on it. They are not floating or swimming through it. They are actually walking on it. Because of this, they're very lightweight, and so they can basically walk over the water. Floating of a needle, similarly, if you smoothly slide a needle to the top of the water layer, so this will actually float over the water layer. Um, uh, the needle it should not prick the surface tension, and then it will simply float over it. Now, using soap and detergents or washing with hot water, it lowers the surface tension. So basically what happens is, when the liquid, we actually use hot water for washing. This is because it reduces the surface tension. So a cloth, it will get soaked up very easily if the water is hot. Otherwise it will take a little while. Or you can say, we add the soap or detergent in the water to reduce the surface tension, which actually helps in the washing as well. If you look at this rightmost animation, you can see a spider, it is walking over the water. This is surface tension, and in this animation you can see that we have a ring and a water bubble, it was formed between it, and there is this needle, and this needle, this actually as we prick the film formed between the ring, this actually breaks it, and you can see that this was an elastic membrane, it has been break. And as you can see that the circle formed, this is equal from all the sides. So this actually, it is actually representing that the surface tension is equal in all sides. So surface tension is equal in all sides. This can be seen as we prick the needle. So the point the point at which it broke, it was equal from all the direction, and the circle, it expanded in each direction equally. So this shows that surface tension is equal in all directions. So drop of liquid, it tend to be spherical shape in order to minimize the surface area. So the liquid droplet, it is spherical in shape. This is because it needs surface area to be minimum. For such a small droplet, the surface tension will cause an increase of internal pressure in order to balance the surface force. So this surface tension, this is actually um, it will be balanced by the increase of internal pressure P inside the droplet. There is an internal pressure P and there is a surface tension which is acting on its circumference, you can say. So this surface tension, this is balanced by the internal pressure of the droplet. Surface tension will also increase the internal pressure in a cylindrical jet of fluid. In either case, if R is very small, the value of P becomes very large. So actually we are going to determine the expression for surface tension in a droplet and then in a cylindrical jet. There you will be more clear about this. And for small bubbles in a liquid, if this pressure is greater than the pressure of vapor or gas in a bubble, the bubble will collapse. So let's calculate the surface tension in a liquid droplet. As we know, liquid droplet is spherical in shape and we have to cut it in half. And so an internal pressure will be developed, which is due to the surface tension which is acting on the circumference of this droplet. So let's calculate the internal pressure which is developed due to the surface tension. This pressure P, it is developed inside the liquid droplet, which is in excess of the outside pressure. So the total internal pressure is the pressure because of the surface tension plus the outside pressure. Sigma is the surface tension of a liquid. It is its units are force per unit length, so Newton per meter. D is the diameter of the droplet. As a surface tension, it is acting on the circumference of this droplet. So converting the force developed due to surface tension, it is sigma into the circumference, which is 2 pi r or pi d. And the pressure force exerted on the area, it is pressure into area, which is pi by 4 d square. Area is pi r square, just r is d by 2, so you get p into pi by 4 d square. Now for equilibrium, these two forces must be equal and opposite. So equate these two and rearrange, you'll finally get this expression. This internal pressure P, which is in excess of the outside pressure, this is equal to 4 sigma over d. So from this expression, we can see that with the increase in the size of the droplet, the pressure intensity decreases. So let's see the surface tension in a soap bubble. So soap bubble is basically a hollow bubble in which its two surfaces are in contact with air, one inside and the other outside. So the pressure inside the bubble is same as computed previously. It is P into pi by 4 d square. While the surface tension on both sides of the bubble, so this has to be multiplied by 2 as the circumference is pi d, but it is on both sides, so it has to be multiplied by 2. Now for equilibrium, they have to be equal, and just rearrange the expression. So this internal pressure is 8 sigma over d, which you can see it is double as that of a liquid droplet. Now the surface tension in a liquid jet. Liquid jet is a stream of liquid which is flowing with high velocity. It has very small diameter d and the length L. For this length, we are considering that the diameter is constant. So we cut it in half, and we see that the pressure it will be exerted on this complete area, L into D. So the force due to pressure is P into L into D. By the surface tension, as we know, surface tension force is force per unit length. So it will be only acting on the length, 2L. Sigma into 2L. Previously we were seeing a spherical, so it was acting on the circumference, but here as it is rectangular, so it will be only acting on the length of the element. So it is sigma into 2L. Now equate the above two equations and you get P is 2 sigma over D. That is, the pressure is half that of a liquid droplet. So let's solve some relevant numerical problems. Air is introduced through a nozzle into a tank of water to form a stream of bubbles. If the bubbles are intended to have a diameter 2 mm, calculate by how much pressure of the air at the nozzle must exceed that of the surrounding water. As we know, the pressure, because of the surface tension, this is in excess to the atmospheric pressure. So basically we need to calculate this P pressure, which will be for a liquid droplet, and the surface tension value is given 72.7 × 10⁻³ Newton per meter. So this excess pressure, this is given by 2 sigma over R or 4 sigma over D, which is for a liquid droplet. As diameter is 2 mm, so radius is 1 mm. So substitute the value of surface tension above equation and you get this pressure in Newton per meter square, which is pascals. The surface tension of water in contact with air at 20 degrees centigrade is 0.0725 Newton per meter. The pressure inside a droplet of water is to be 0.02 Newton per centimeter square, greater than the outside pressure. Calculate the diameter of droplet of water. So for the droplet of water, this thing is to be noted because we need to use a relevant formula. So the pressure which is greater than the outside pressure, so this means this is the only excess pressure, which is 0.02 Newton per centimeter square. You can convert it to Newton per meter square, like over here they have already done it. And the surface tension is 0.07 Newton per meter. You have to calculate the diameter of droplet. So use the same formula. P is 4 sigma over D, and just rearrange, and the answer will be in meters and convert it to millimeter by multiplying by 1000. Find the surface tension in a soap bubble of 40 mm diameter. So diameter is given and it is a soap bubble when the inside pressure is 2.5 Newton per meter square above the atmospheric pressure. So this excess pressure is 2.5 Newton per meter square. Diameter is given as soap bubble, so the formula for the excess pressure is 8 sigma over D. Just use it and you have your answer. So the last numerical for surface tension, the pressure outside the droplet of water of diameter 0.04 millimeter is 10.32 Newton per centimeter square. So the outside pressure is given, it is 10.32 Newton per centimeter square, and the diameter is 0.04 millimeter. Calculate the pressure within the droplet if the surface tension is given as 0.0725 Newton per meter. So first of all, calculate the pressure inside the droplet of water by using the formula P is equal to 4 sigma over D. And this pressure, this is in excess of the outside pressure. So the total pressure inside the droplet is pressure due to surface tension plus the pressure outside the droplet, which was given 10.32 Newton per centimeter square. So add these two and you'll have your total inside pressure. Now let's see capillarity. Capillarity is defined as a phenomena of rise or fall of a liquid surface in a small tube relative to the adjacent general level of liquid when the tube is held vertically in liquid. It is expressed in terms of centimeter or millimeter of liquid. So we will immerse a small tube of diameter d inside the liquid, and we can observe rise of liquid inside the tube, which is given by H. This H is known as capillary rise. While in this figure B, you can see capillary fall. So for capillary rise, we have a concave meniscus for which we read the bottom of this concave meniscus, while for capillary fall, we read the top of the convex meniscus. So liquid, they basically have two types of molecular attraction, cohesion and adhesion. Cohesion, basically it helps to resist the tensile forces, while adhesion, it tries to adhere to the body. And the attraction between the molecules, it forms an imaginary um, film which is capable of resisting tension at the interface of the liquid and solid, liquid and the air, or the two immiscible liquid, and this capability of resisting tensile force, this is known as surface tension. So the capillarity phenomena, it is observed because of this surface tension. So a liquid that twists the solid and has greater adhesive forces than cohesive forces will have capillary rise, like water. While a liquid that does not wet the solid and has greater cohesive forces than adhesion, that is like mercury. Mercury will have capillary fall. So let's write the expression for capillary rise, where theta is the contact angle between the liquid and solid. As we know, we will have surface tension, which will be tangential to this concave meniscus, because of had it been vertical, the surface tension would be normal to it, but now as it is concave, so surface tension will be tangential to it. So the angle of the surface tension with the vertical side of the tube is theta, and we need to find out the vertical component of the surface tension, so that we can compute the vertical pull because of this surface tension. Small d is the internal tube diameter and capital H is the rise of liquid in the tube. This rise is because of the capillarity. So the upward pull due to surface tension, this is equal to component of surface tension which is acting upward, which is sigma cos of theta into the perimeter of tube. As we know, the surface tension is it is acting on the circumference or the perimeter, which is 2 pi r or pi d. So the upward pull because of the surface tension is sigma cos theta into pi d. As the atmospheric pressure is same inside and outside the tube, therefore the only force which is opposing this upward pull is the weight of the vertical sided column of liquid. So this upward pull has to be balanced by the downward pull by the weight of the liquid inside the tube. So the weight of the liquid, which is for this height h, it can be computed by as we know, weight is specific weight into volume, and specific weight is rho g, and volume is area of the tube pi by 4 d square into the h rise. So these two has to be equal for equilibrium. Now just rearrange and simplify, and you'll get the expression for h, which is capillary rise, which is 4 sigma cos theta over rho g d. So from here you can see that capillary rise is inversely proportional with diameter of the tube. By increasing the diameter of the tube, the capillary rise will decrease. Now please see in this figure, on this graph we have capillary rise on the horizontal axis. Here we have 0, then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and on the other axis we have internal diameter of the tube in millimeters. Here we have 5, 10, 15, 20. Now for the distilled water at 20 degrees centigrade, if we increase the internal diameter of tube from 5 to 20 millimeter, the capillary rise, it will reduce from 4.7 millimeter to almost 0.6 millimeters. While for tap water, similar behavior observed. It capillary rise, it reduces from 2.3 millimeter to 0.3 millimeter roughly. For the mercury, we will have capillary fall, so its values are negative. So for the mercury, if we increase the internal diameter from 5 to 20 millimeter, its value reduces from minus 0.13 to minus 1.3 to almost the capillary fall, it diminishes to 0. So it is very conveniently possible that we can minimize the errors due to capillarity by simply increasing the diameter of tube, and 20 millimeter is not such large diameter. So let's solve the relevant numerical problem. Calculate the capillary rise in a glass tube of 2.5 millimeter diameter when immersed vertically in water and then in mercury. Take the surface tension 0.0725 Newton per meter for water and 0.52 Newton per meter for mercury in contact with air. The specific gravity for mercury is given as 13.6 and the angle of contact is 130 degrees. So basically you have to use the same formula which I just used, which I have just computed. H is 4 sigma cos theta over rho GD. The diameter of tube is given 2.5 millimeter. Surface tension for water is 0.0725 Newton per meter. So basically what happened is the same glass tube, it is immersed, firstly it is immersed in water for which the surface tension is given, and later on it is immersed in mercury. So we have two cases, and the surface tension in mercury is also given 0.52 Newton per meter. So we have to compute the rise. For the water, for the first case, 4 sigma cos theta over rho GD, sigma is 0.0725 Newton per meter for water, theta is 0, theta angle is 0, and rho density is 1000 kg per meter cube, G is 9.81 and diameter is given 2.5 millimeter. Substitute all that and you'll have this answer 11.8 millimeter of water. Then for the second case, for the mercury, the surface tension value will be 0.52 and the theta is given 130 degrees and specific gravity is given 13.6. So its density is specific gravity into 1000, which is 13,600 kg per meter cube. Now substitute all these values and you'll have this answer minus 4 millimeter for mercury. This minus sign, this shows that it is capillary fall. Vapor pressure. So a change from liquid state to gaseous state is known as vaporization. Vaporization depends upon the prevailing pressure and temperature condition. It occurs because of the continuous escaping of molecules through free liquid surface. It is the pressure at which the liquid is converted into vapors. Cavitation is a phenomena that is seen commonly in pumps. A pump has the suction side and a discharge pipe. The suction pipe, it has low pressure vacuum pressure, but the discharge pipe has higher pressure. The diameter of the suction pipe is greater than the discharge pipe. What happens basically is the pressure inside the suction pipe is lesser, negative, or you can say vacuum pressure. And if the pressure inside this suction pipe, it gets below the vapor pressure of the liquid, so the phenomena of vaporization will begin, the bubbles will be formed, and those bubbles, when they They are carried by the flowing liquid into the region of high pressure. When they come in contact with the boundary of the pipe, they are going to collapse, and they are going to cause erosion and cavities. This phenomena is known as cavitation. It is observed in pumps, turbines, propellers. This cavitation, it is actually going to damage the instrument. As you can see over here, the impeller, these veins, you can see the cavities are formed. So this is because of this phenomena, cavitation. So whenever the liquid when the liquid pressure is below the vapor pressure of the liquid, okay, when the pressure inside the pipe is below the liquid vapor pressure of the liquid, then this phenomena, cavitation, would occur. So basically, to avoid it, we try that this condition never occurs and the pressure is always greater than the vapor pressure of the liquid. For this purpose, the diameter of the suction pipe is always kept larger than the diameter of discharge pipe. Compressibility and bulk modulus. For that, so let's assume we have a piston on which we apply a force delta P and the volume is reduced by delta V. So bulk modulus, this is basically the change in pressure to volumetric strain. Volumetric strain is uh, change in volume to original volume, right? And as because it is reducing the volume, so we can use a negative sign with it. And we use a symbol K for bulk modulus. So rearranging, we'll get bulk modulus is minus V dP over dV. Consider unit mass of a substance, that is specific volume is 1 over rho. Now rearrange it, V into rho is equal to 1. So let's differentiate it. We know the differentiation rule, that the first entity as it is, that is V, into the derivative of the second, which is d rho, plus the second as it is, rho, into the derivative of the second, which is derivative of the first, which is dV, is equal to 0. Now rearrange it for dV, you'll get minus V over rho into d rho. Now substitute for V, which is 1 over rho. So minus 1 over rho square into d rho. So we can basically write the bulk modulus in the form of density. So it will be K is equal to rho into dP over d rho. If we take the rho to the denominator of this d rho, we get d rho over rho. That is bulk modulus. It is a ratio of change in pressure to change in density. As a volumetric strain is a ratio of two volumes, so the bulk modulus will have same units as that of pressure, which is Newton per meter square, and same dimensions. No need to remember the typical values. Now the compressibility, it is basically the reciprocal of bulk modulus of elasticity, and that is 1 over K. So that's it for today. Thank you so much. See you in our online session. Take care. Allah Hafiz.